Here's your host, Brendan Lauren Maxwell.
All right. I'm live and I'm without Paulie, but I see a bunch of followers of Paulie here. I don't know where Paulie is, if I'm being honest with you. But I'm happy that everybody is here and we're going to talk politics, and hopefully Paulie will be joining us in a little bit. I see some comments here. A lot has changed since the last time we gathered for the debate. Indeed, a lot has changed. So this is another night that makes me unhappy because, for one, I have a camera that's not working, and two, X has once again blocked my stream. I did not manage to get it fixed from last time, so I'm not very happy about that. I do not know why my stream is being blocked on X. Maybe I'll get it solved this week. I'm bummed out because I have a pretty big audience that watches on X, so they haven't watched the last few weeks. But in either case, we're just going to do it live here. And I see a bunch of followers here from Latino Slant on the way. Here is Paulie right now, who just texted me. He says he'll be on in 2 minutes, and I'm going to text him back here. So anyways, so what's up? Let's read a few comments here before Paulie shows up. All right. Latino Slant sent me. Hey, that's great. Here's another one right here. It's crazy how much has changed since the last time we've all gathered to watch the debate. Yes, that was actually a really fun show. I told Paulie that maybe we should do that more often. Latino Slant Raid. I think I just read that one. Hello and good evening. Well, thank you for joining me. I want to talk politics, but I'm going to wait till Paulie shows up so I can get his thoughts on a few things, and I can bounce some things off of him. How is everybody doing? Just to recap some of the things that have happened, I think since we last did a show, so we had the assassination attempt on Trump. That was about a week and a half ago. Since then, Joe Biden has stepped down, so he is not running anymore. And now Kamala Harris is presumably the new nominee. She's gathered a number of delegates. I see Paulie right here has just showed up, so let's add Paulie. Paulie, how you doing?
Hey, good evening, good morning, wherever you're at.
You just waking up?
I'm thinking, you know how people come in from all over the world on the podcast and all that stuff.
Sure.
Man, how you been?
I'm doing good, man. Just enjoying politics. Once again, my stream is blocked on X, so I'm not very happy about that. I'm gonna have to figure that out. But
man, yeah, I don't know what's going on with you in that, but there's absolutely nothing going on as far as the last time we did this thing and had that, and there was that debate. Yo, some crazy stuff happening.
Sure. Yeah. Well, the assassination attempt, of course, was a pretty big deal. And who would have thought that?
Oh my God! You're right.
Who would have thought that would end Joe Biden's presidency? I mean, really put an end to it. Kind of. It started with the debate. It kind of spiraled, and it seemed to just be a number of different things going on. It also forced the head of the Secret Service to step down, which I thought was pretty interesting. I'm not sure I can think of a time where you had somebody who appeared in front of Congress and they made zero attempt to try to portray themselves in a better light. She went there and didn't seem like she had any interest in trying to ease the concerns of Congress people, and she didn't come across necessarily as very likable or even aware of everything that was happening. Both the left and the right seemed pretty upset with her, so I think it was inevitable that she was going to step down.
I didn't see any of that, the hearings. I did see a couple of remarks from people from AOC to Republicans just going after her. So it was pretty brutal. And they failed. They absolutely failed. And heads are rolling, which it should. I mean, that's just my take.
What are your thoughts on some of the conspiracy theories that are floating around online?
Oh God, everything from like the Prez not being alive. There's a body double, and Where has he been?
Well,
You
not
talking
just
about
Joe
stuff like
Biden, but
that?
around the assassination attempt.
Oh, okay. So let's go back to assassination.
Yeah.
It's like we got to catch up. I will say before we do that, we got a lot of good replies and good commentary on what we did as far as our discussion with the debate and our reaction. So good job, brother. Good job on that. I've seen some other brown folk talking politics. They need to stop and they need to just come and listen to us.
I thought it was fun. I enjoyed doing that. That's the first time I think I've ever done a live event where we just kind of covered the event and went along. But we had a pretty good sized crowd. I enjoyed it, and I'd do it again. I look forward to election night. That's going to be a really fun one. So, but in light of go ahead.
So between that debate, right? You've had the assassination attempt. You had the RNC. You had the Vance being announced. You had the RNC. You had those 3 nights. Then rumors of Biden's going to step down because he got the COVIDs, right, in Vegas because he was giving speeches, and of course he gets COVID right before he's going to go talk to the Latinos, right? Leave him high and dry, and he's gone out of sight publicly for days. And then the rumors, and then of course what happens recently, whereas he's announced he's not running. This is historic. This has not happened. Was it LBJ? Since LBJ?
Nah, I mean, okay. So I saw some comments, and including in here about it being a coup. Why does it not qualify as a coup? So I'm really, 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 really hard to sell on conspiracy theories. However, there is one interesting thing I'll point out later in the show that has to do with the Trump assassination. But generally speaking, I'm a very tough sell on conspiracy theories. I just don't like them. But I've noticed since the Trump assassination attempt, we've had tons of conspiracy theories floating around online, not just in relation to the Trump assassination attempt, but also in relation to the Joe Biden stepping down. And so you're kind of seeing a lot of things going around online on both sides related to that. I think the COVID thing was probably an excuse to get him out of the limelight. But I don't think it really matters. I mean, so he's going to step down. I think it was a poor strategic decision by Democrats, but it is what it is.
So going back to the assassination attempt and the conspiracy theory around that, was it fake? What purpose? To what purpose? Who gains from that? Does let's say it's on Trump's end that he staged the whole thing so he can have his American moment and wave his fist in the air. That's a big reach, man. That's a big reach.
Let me dispel 2 conspiracy theories I really have a problem with.
Right.
So the first conspiracy theory comes from the left. And what they do is they say, Donald Trump organized this fake assassination attempt on himself in order to, I guess, get this iconic photo and win the presidency and da da da. And the crux of it is so ridiculous because, for one, they spend all year talking about what an idiot he is. He's such an idiot. He pushes all these conspiracy theories, and then they turn around and push this conspiracy theory that he's so intelligent that he somehow hired this 20-year-old kid, got this 20-year-old kid to shoot a bullet at him from 150 yards away. It only grazed his ear so he can take this iconic photo, raise his fist, scream, fight, 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 and then win the presidency. So I think that it's a little bit ridiculous because it goes against the whole notion that Trump is an idiot. And I also think you'd have to be absolutely insane to even attempt to try to hire a 20-year-old kid to only shoot you in the ear. So I have a problem with that one. I also have a problem with the right pushing a conspiracy of their own, saying that the government did this and attempted to kill him, primarily because all year long we hear about how incompetent the government is, and yet all of a sudden we're supposed to think that the government is competent enough to pull off this mass conspiracy. So you either think that the government is incompetent or you don't. Now, I'll say this. I think that there's something very interesting that the Heritage Foundation pointed out today. And, look, love or hate the Heritage Foundation. Not everything they say is false. So they tracked the cell phone data of somebody, they don't know who, but there's cell phone data trails of somebody going back and forth from the shooter's house and the shooter's work to Washington, D.C. multiple times. They just dropped this today. Did you see it? It's
Oh
absolutely
boy. Oh boy. I
insane.
did not. I did not. I did not
So they
know about
showed a
this.
map. They have tracked a cell phone that was going between the shooter's house and the shooter's work all the way to Washington, D.C. on the same block, same few block radius as the FBI headquarters.
Mhm.
Multiple trips over the months. That to me is extremely interesting. Now, I'm not making any allegations. I don't know. I'm a tough sell on conspiracies. Correlation is not always causation, but I think that's really, really interesting. And the Heritage Foundation just dropped this today. You could go to their site. They have another site that is basically like the investigatory arm of the Heritage Foundation,
Mhm.
and it's on that site. So go check it out. It's interesting.
And just a note, we you know, in any of this stuff, right? We just got to kind of dance around with our language on YouTube because you know, YouTube be YouTubing sometimes, so you know we can get in trouble. But you guys know what's going on. You guys are hip as far as in the crowd. But that's fascinating. Brandon, there's like something happening every couple of hours now because of this election.
Yeah, it's wonderful, isn't it?
Secretly, yes, yes,
I
it
love it.
is.
Like this
Yes.
is what makes politics fun. Well, it used to be in the old days that it was like an October surprise, the quote unquote, that's what they call it, an
Mm.
October surprise in politics. But
Hmm.
now it's like every week there's a new surprise. And so it's tough to keep up. In fact, I
Yeah.
saw a column the other day saying that even AI was having trouble keeping up. There's this, I don't know,
Wow.
a university or some professors who have been tracking AI responses on Google. And
Uh-huh.
what they're doing is when breaking news happens, they'll go to AI to search for an answer, to ask it a question, and they're getting answers back from AI basically saying, we don't have the answer to that yet, even though the
Hmm.
regular media is covering it. So even AI is having trouble right now competing with how fast the news is changing. So I think that's kind of interesting. Probably because they don't have news sites to steal from.
Really fast, I want to say we're on X via Latino Slant. We are multi-streaming, multicasting, whatever they call it. So we're in the Chicano multiverse right now, happening. And as he sips his cup, that is an Abbey Road Beatles
This
cup. That
is,
is a beautiful cup,
have
bro.
I ever mentioned I'm a Beatles fan?
No, you don't, but you always have it there on your shows, and
Yeah, love the Beatles.
props to that, bro. Props to that.
Okay, so Biden is stepping down. It was fairly looking like that's what was going to happen.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to tell you why I don't think this is a smart decision for Democrats. First of all, I don't think it really matters who Democrats are going to put up. I think
Mm.
Democrats are going to lose the election no matter what. However,
Okay.
and I've talked off the record with a number of political strategists who I know,
Mm.
seasoned political strategists, by the way, people who run campaigns, people who've done it for
Hmm.
decades, and they agree with this assessment, which is my assessment as well. Which is, even though Biden was old and was kind of bumbling and
Sure.
seemed kind of his cognitive
Sure.
abilities were on the decline, he had two advantages.
Yeah.
The first advantage was he was an incumbent president, an incumbent president. Okay, so he's already in office. There's a lot of advantage and a lot of power that comes with already being in office. The other thing that he had that was to his advantage was the fact that all of his gaffes and his being prone to gaffes was
Hmm.
baked in with him. Okay, so it's already been tested. He's already battle tested in the electoral field, in elections. He's been in office for decades. So it doesn't surprise anybody. It's baked in with him. People expect Joe Biden to make gaffes, and so it doesn't hurt him. In the same way that people expect Trump to say wild and crazy things and it doesn't hurt him. Okay, it's just baked in with Trump. Well, it's the same way with Joe Biden. Okay. So those two advantages are tremendous in an election. Now, here's where I'm going with this. Kamala is not somebody who has run at this level, like Joe Biden. And so there's a fair amount of the country who isn't even aware of how gaffe prone she is.
Right.
She's extremely gaffe prone. There's a reason why they have kept her out of the limelight, basically Joe Biden's entire presidency. And the few times they've sent her out, she's screwed things up. And so I think that this is a liability for Democrats. You have a candidate who is untested and whose gaffes are not baked in with her candidacy in the same way they are with Trump's or Biden's.
Can I add something to that? I know you're working on
one thing.
Yeah.
So it means that in order to win, she's going to have to stay on message, among other things. She can't go off message. And that's really hard on the campaign trail. So go ahead.
To add to that, right? I'd like to add to that is, unfortunately, she has run for president before. Unfortunate for her that it was such a disaster. Unfortunate for her that it's on video, the Tulsi Gabbard evisceration of her and her record and her policies. So you add that to the fire, right? Because you're saying about the gaps and they kept her away, which rightly so, because she's always polled very she's not the polling unfavorability or the favorability. She's like one of the worst as far as favorability. So what I'm seeing a lot, Brandon, is people sharing that Gabbard video over and over every day. So you have that because
I think so. I think that video appeals more to conservatives than anybody else. I don't think she's going to lose any votes over that video. I know the video that you're talking about.
Will she win independents? Because at the end of the day, we're talking about independent votes.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that video is going to make that big of a difference. Primarily because Gabbard was just not popular enough herself. So when they see Gabbard winning in a debate with her, it really doesn't mean anything. That's what I think. But
I don't know, man.
I think she has plenty of weaknesses. Don't get me wrong, but that video is not going to be the end of it.
But see, I bring it up because Gabbard's pretty prolific now. It's not like she's disappeared. She's pretty vocal right now with like just kind of like reminding people on Harris's record. And this is what I want to hit on in Harris's record. Anyways, that's just a little disagreement we have.
Well, let me say another liability of Kamala Harris. The other liability of Kamala Harris is her background as a district attorney and an attorney general and a district attorney. Let me show you a video that I have here of Kamala Harris back when she was talking about why we need more money for prisons. And then I'll get your thoughts on this.
Okay, so I say with all love and warmth that part of the concern also for people who are progressive thinking and liberal-minded, or just progressive thinking in terms of just fix it, is that we all have these posters in our closet that is attached to a stick that we sometimes will card out when we're talking about criminal justice policy and those statistics that you first heard when we opened it up, incarceration. And we run around with these signs, build more schools, less jails. Build more schools, less jails. And we walk around everywhere, build more schools, we protest, build more schools, less jails. Put money into education, not prisons. There's a fundamental problem with that approach, in my opinion. And it's this. I agree with that conceptually, but you have not addressed the reason I have 3 padlocks on my front door.
So I think videos like that, and there's a lot of them, are going to come back to hurt her during the campaign trail. She's a former district attorney. The other thing is, she would send out mailers back when she was a district attorney using Latino gang members on the mailers to scare voters in the same way that Trump did.
Lovely.
And so I don't know if the left just isn't aware of that or if they're just turning a blind eye to that. But, she's somewhat conservative in her background. In fact, there's all types of photos of her floating around with Border Patrol and with other district attorneys and advocating tough on crime sentencing with nonviolent offenses and things like that. So I think it'll be something that comes to the forefront. That's her other liability. What do you think?
It sounds like she's got a stack of liabilities, man. But see, she so this is the gift that she's been given, because she's not going to be really vetted. She's selected, she's anointed, right? And she's getting all that money. You know, the super delegates are all lining up. um I don't think there's going to be anyone on the Dems that are going to, challenge her at the convention. So I think videos like this, and like you said, I think the other side is going to use them to their advantage. People are going to share them. Um, she's a waffler as well.
Well, all politicians are to an extent,
But
but
with her
some are worse than others.
Right, with her record.
Yeah, she's a
That's what I
tough
meant.
one to pin down. She's kind of all over the map. The
Mhm.
thing with Kamala is this, and I don't mean to be disrespectful. I don't know if her name is it pronounced Kamala or is it pronounced
Kamala.
Kamala?
I don't do it. I don't know.
So yeah, I don't mean, I don't have a
Kamala.
problem with her. I'm not trying to purposely disrespect her. I
Right.
hear it pronounced in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the left, Democrats in particular,
Mm-hmm.
their problem is that they are absolutely 100% obsessed with checking boxes. Okay.
Mm.
The whole mantra of the Democrat Party over the past 5 years has become identity politics.
Okay.
And so when you have somebody like Kamala come along who checks a few boxes, the appetite for that in the left is so strong that it blinds them to what is actually whether or not it's a smart decision. Like it blinds them to dumb decisions because there are better candidates who are out there than her. And it probably would have been smarter even to leave Biden in. But so I just think that they're blinded right now. There's a lot of enthusiasm. And so it seems like right out the gate, oh, this is something new we're experiencing. She's going to come in. She's going to dominate Trump. She's this smart, tough district attorney. But give it a few weeks. Things will settle down. Wait till she takes a few questions. Wait till she goes off script. Wait till her background makes it back into the limelight. And everybody will quickly be reminded as to why she was kept out of the limelight this whole time under Biden and why her last presidential bid failed.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the obsession of checking the boxes. I mean, the Republicans check boxes too. This is
Sure.
Is this a different different qualifications, right? And it's fascinating because the Democrats check boxes that aren't really based on record and your policies and your successes with your political career. Whether you like those policies or not, that's what the Republicans do that more. That's more their emphasis, whether we agree with those policies or not.
Well, all politics is identity politics. I guess the argument that I would make is that as far as identity politics goes, the Democrat Party plays a particularly egregious form of identity politics because the power in the Democrat Party is largely dependent on pitting those identities against each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's the problem. But of course, all politics is identity politics to an extent. And you see egregious forms on the right as well, on the far right, for example, right? Look at the Southern strategy. Was it during the 70s, right? Mm-hmm. Using racist catcalls to appeal to the KKK and toward racists in the South to gin up votes to the Republican Party, things like that. So you see it on the right as well.
Well, I brought it up in my video essay yesterday in regards to I see two items where the Republicans could lose votes, independent votes that were maybe leaning towards the right. Is their mass deportation rhetoric at the RNC and those posters? I think you lost a lot of votes there. I think it's gonna turn some people off. That that Axios poll that came out, in some of the information that came out that was very interesting was that, on the whole, Latinos are more lenient towards a pathway towards citizenship. I thought that's fascinating, and it makes sense because we're very complex as voters, with in our principles, and I think it absolutely makes sense. So that was one thing. The other thing too is if you're doubling down on Kamala's sexual past, as far as her being anything, all that is also disgusting. And
Well, I think Republicans should stay away from that,
right. No,
especially
that
with
was
a candidate like Trump.
right, but that's what I'm saying. I'm already seeing that.
Yeah.
No, and I'm saying
look,
you're gonna lose votes, guys, if you keep that shit up.
It's going to be a strategic, I think, mistake for the left or the right to make this entire election about race or gender or, moral indiscretions. Okay. With both these candidates, there's moral indiscretions. If the right pounds and pounds and pounds and says and tax her, her race or her ethnicity or her gender, it's going to hurt Republicans because people will get sick of hearing about it. If the left continues to push, only talking about race and gender and things like that, that's also going to push people away. So I think both parties are probably best suited going forward to just focus on the issues. And I think this is the first election that's really like that, right? Because we've already been down this path, but I feel like there's a fatigue in this country right now of hyper focusing on race and gender and identity politics.
Big time.
That I feel like both parties are making a mistake if they go down this route. Now, I want to say one thing that's interesting. I have a video I want to play to you.
Okay, cool.
I don't think the Republican Party today is the Republican Party of even 4 years ago. If you look at the national convention that just happened, it was probably one of the best produced conventions that Republicans have ever had. And it was a very diverse convention, both ideologically, racially, everything. But there's one speech that stood out to me that I think is really important, and one that if I were a Democrat strategist, I'd definitely be paying attention to. And that is, oh crud, I forgot to plug in my phone. And that is the speech by the Teamsters president. So I'm going to play a quick speech here by the Teamsters president who appeared at the GOP convention.
Today, the Teamsters are here to say we are not beholden to anyone or any party. We will create an agenda and work with a bipartisan coalition ready to accomplish something real for the American worker. And I don't care about getting criticized. It's an honor to be the first Teamster in our 121-year history to address the Republican National Convention.
Wow.
That's a big deal. What do you say, 121-year history? You have the head of the Teamsters at the Republican convention. And I think there's a few things that have led to this. And I think one of them is Trump. Trump's populist appeal also has done very well with the working class, whereas the left has largely lost the working class in many facets and largely started to appeal to people in academia, media, more elitist types. And you see that reflected in the polls and the voters that they're losing. And so if I'm a Democrat, I'm a strategist, this is something that I'm keeping an eye on. With that said, I have to go for a second. So I'm going to have you take over because my computer's about to die. I forgot to plug it in.
Do it.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, we got a couple of announcements here. Okay,
sure,
so
go ahead. I'll be right back.
Just responding to the video and then what Brandon put up. I still haven't seen that speech. I was talking to my mother this morning, and that's the speech she sent me. She really loved that speech. And I was like, huh, okay. And then Brandon says, I want to bring this up. So, Yeah, listen, and my mom is an OG hippie from the '60s. So I mean, you could say she checked a lot of boxes. On her way up, upward mobility, American dream, single Latina Chicana mom that raised me and from East LA to LA, et cetera, et cetera. Got into corporate and became a success. Homeowner. I mean, she came from real poverty. So for her to even say this, I was kind of speechless that she brought up that this was her favorite speech, and it kind of blew me away. So there is a lot of Latinos, OG Democrats as well, like my mom, who saw this speech. So that says something. And one more thing, I just want to say, I want to say thank you to Scenarios. He sent me a super chat for $10. Good to see you, man. Good running into you the other day, last week. I forgot when we ran into you. Much love. Thank you for the $10 super chat. Brandon's back.
Yeah, and there's a comment I really like here that I 100% agree with. And that comment is from Donovan. Biggest problem is the extreme left has smashed into the extreme right. They went so far into one direction that made a circle. And I 100% agree with this. I think the far right and the far left come full circle with each other at the end of the day. And you see that reflected in them trying to cancel each other and all types of things. So interesting observation there. I want to quickly, before we move on to talk about a few other things, I want to tell everybody about my movie.
Yeah.
If you have not seen it, the movie is called American Homeboy, and you can watch it at Daily Chela TV. And you have until October, upon which we will be making an announcement. Here's a quick look at the movie that I recently released.
The term Chicano, when that word came out, man, it went into your soul. This is who I am. I am different. We were different. I don't care what we did, we were different. If we dressed, we did it differently. If we had bikes, our bikes were different. Our cars, we did it different. That's just who we were because we were different.
To me, Holmes, is like if you don't know that you're Chicano, then you're not. You dig what I'm saying? It's like, if you don't, if you're asking yourself that question, maybe try softball or whatever. I don't know.
It's art, it's philosophy, it's religion. They are not identifying as Hispanic, right? Not identifying as Latino. They're identifying as Chicano, as a political statement to say, no, we're not with that European vibe, right? We're going to go back to our indigenous, where we come from here on this continent.
All right. So there's a quick snippet from the movie American Homeboy, which filmed last year. You can watch it at Daily Chela TV. Back to the topic at hand. Paulie, I would be interested to hear your thoughts on the Latino vote. Okay, so we knew what the polling numbers looked like with Biden. Biden was slightly favored by Latinos, but not by much. There was about a 20-point drop in Latino support for the Democrat Party over the past two elections. So he was slightly favored over Trump, but that's not saying a lot compared to where the Latino vote used to be. Now we have Kamala Harris, who's the presumptive nominee. What do you think that will look like with Latinos?
Depending on how they hit the message of reproductive rights and abortion, she could gain some Latina votes for sure, or maybe they're already there. They're already the Democratic votes. I think there's a lot of bad messaging as far as what Trump is with that. But then there's just, the messages that, with Vance and a national abortion ban, that's all they need to know. People are peace out. I'm going with Harris. So I see that being that could be a possible wedge issue. But at the end of the day, right now, it's inflation, it's security, it's those are the big ones.
Well,
And then, uh-huh.
if I know the Democrat Party, I would fully expect a screening of Flaming Hot Cheetos to be screened at all of Kamala's rallies to build the Latino vote. Was that the name of the movie? Flaming Hot? It was Flaming Hot, right?
Flaming Hot, yeah.
Remember when they played that at the White House?
I do,
Yeah.
and I think Biden was being a little too flirtatious with Eva Longoria.
Yeah. So I think that I think Kamala will probably pick up a few votes, but I think those will be offset by the votes that she loses.
Yeah. I mean, this is a complex one, right? Because there's just going to be a lot of Latinos that are just going to be turned off with Harris. You know.
Well, I mean,
what can I tell you? I mean, whether it's sexist or they're being bigots, that's there, and it's there. You know, you flip it around. You know, as far as not voting for Trump because he's an old rich white guy. So that has entered into the mix. The fact that she is a female, but also too the fact that the Democrats are going to pounce on that so much, like the first ever black Latino female to be this and that. So people just don't want to hear it.
Here, I think that there's an elephant in the room, and I don't hear Democrats addressing it, or they're probably not even aware of it, but it's something I've been hounding for a while. The problem is not so much the candidate. I think the problem is the party. So I'm not sure it matters who they put up as the candidate, because I think a lot of Americans are sick of some of the things that the party is pushing. And I think that Democrats are underestimating some of those things. And so I think we'll find out in November. But I know that I went to a lowrider show recently in Long Beach, California. Okay, there was a few hundred Mexicans and a few black guys there too. The whole night, I didn't meet a single Biden supporter or Harris supporter.
Wow.
I love politics to everyone, so I'm asking everybody who they're voting for.
Right.
Everybody I talked to at this show was either pro-Trump or hated both parties.
Yep.
Okay, and so that's a problem for Democrats. There wasn't a single person who was like, I'm voting Democrat. And I heard a number of reasons why. The main reasons I heard, the criticisms I heard of the Democrat Party, was some of the things they're teaching in schools. I heard that came up a lot more than I expected. I heard a lot of criticism. Some of
That's
the things.
California, yeah. Okay.
And the other criticism I heard was homelessness and crime.
Homelessness and crime.
Okay. Like drugs.
So that's security.
So security
issue and safety.
Yeah. And then things that are being taught in schools that they didn't like. So
the culture wars.
Yeah, the culture wars. The gender thing came up multiple times with people that I was speaking with.
And these are voters.
These are voters. And now, well, presumably, we'll see.
There's that.
Lots of people have opinions. Not everybody votes. So I think that's interesting. And I got the same thing. I was at a Mexican wedding just a couple days ago and talking politics to everybody, and I heard the exact same thing as I heard in Long Beach.
Say that again. You heard what?
The exact same thing from people. People were either super pro-Trump or they hated both parties. I didn't hear anybody who was super pro-Democrat.
Wow.
And everybody brought the exact same issues up. And so I just think that the Democrat Party has spent so long focusing on so many issues that just aren't relevant to the average person. Like gender neutral toy owls and things like that. And so they've lost touch of what regular people care about. And in a way, the Democrat Party has become this party that is, they're almost like pathologically tolerant. And they're so afraid of being called intolerant that they're willing to tolerate everything under the sun except a different political opinion.
100%.
And so I think that hurts them. And so, but I don't think they realize that. But I hear that when I'm around regular people, when I'm not in doing my job, when I'm not around people in media, when I'm not around academics and things like that, when I'm just around regular people, this is what I hear. And I just toured 30 cities, by the way. You know, I was in 30 cities and I heard the same criticisms of Democrats in every city. I mean, they loved Trump when I was out in Detroit. So I didn't see this 4 years ago. I didn't see this 8 years ago. And so this feels different to me. And by the way, look, I'm not a Trump supporter. I don't plan to vote for Trump. I didn't vote for him last election. I voted for Biden last election. I would not vote for Biden again. I'm going to vote third party this time around.
You're not going to vote. No one's voting for Biden.
Yeah. And so
yeah,
I am not going, you know, I get accused sometimes on social media because I've defended Trump recently. And so people just assume that I must be some Trump supporter now or something like that. Look, I have a lot of problems with Trump, like a lot of people. But I'm not one of those people who just completely loses my mind. It was like COVID. You remember when everybody lost their mind during COVID?
They call it Trump deranged syndrome.
Yeah, well, it feels like a real thing sometimes.
Yeah.
Because I had somebody just a couple days ago, or maybe it was yesterday, talk about how Trump's a dictator. And I'm like, okay, if Trump's a dictator, he must absolutely be the worst dictator in the history of the world. Because he's the only dictator I know of. They got kicked out of office in 4 years and then got convicted of 34 felonies and then failed to deport the people he was trying to deport. Obama deported more people than Trump.
Correct.
So he was a horrible dictator if that's the case. And so I hear this rhetoric coming from the left, and some of it is just, it's laughable. Like you hear, oh, well, Trump's going to come in, he's going to be a dictator, and he's going to take over, and it's going to be the end of democracy. And all this means to me is the people saying this don't understand anything about how government works and how the system works. I mean, Trump couldn't even get, no matter how hard he tried, one state to flip its delegates, let alone 50. Because of the decentralized way in which our country works, state by state, county by county, city by city, the executive branch, the judicial branch, the executive branch, there's such a split in power that it's virtually impossible for somebody to just come in and take over.
There's some great comments in the chat. There's one gentleman, Michael Barrett, who I don't know if you can check that one out, bring it up. But as far as polling from Florida International University, which also is the same kind of information that Axios says, as far as the top 3 main issues for Latinos were inflation, jobs, economy, and immigration.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't find the thing, but you can show it if you can.
I can't because it's your stream.
Yeah. Okay.
I can't.
Well, that
But good job, Michael. And he sent me a link to that whole thing, and I'll share it with you later on. But you make a lot of sense, man. You make a lot of sense, and I don't know of a dictator that would let people protest. They usually kill them. So,
well, and this,
mass incarceration of protesters, political protesters. I mean, you're right. He was a lousy dictator because he allowed all that to happen in summer 2020.
He wasn't even that effective of a president. I mean, I don't understand the wailing and gnashing of teeth. Do I want him as our president and the representative of the U.S.? Not particularly. But I can objectively stand back and say, hey, I'm glad he didn't get killed by an assassin. And I think that photo was amazing. It was an amazing photo. It's a historic photo. And it took a lot of guts to stand up afterwards and raise your fists and yell, fight. You can't buy a better PR photo than that. And it's, it kind of cracks me up because the left, that's the type of thing that the left wants. They try so hard to create these legends when you have presidents, right? Like, remember Obama, how they had that famous Hope poster of him, right?
Hope.
It was by Farley, that artist Farley.
Yeah, Hope.
Right. So they commissioned an artist to create that photo of him, so you can have this iconic feel that would go on T-shirts and things like that. It wasn't natural; it was contrived. And so when you see it naturally happen with somebody like Trump, it's got to drive the left crazy, because nobody went out of their way to create really necessarily like this iconic photo. It was just the New York Times. They happened to catch it when Trump stood up, but you didn't hire an artist to create it in the same way they did with Obama. It's not like the dark Brandon memes that float around online. This ridiculous dark Brandon campaign that suggested that Joe Biden was just this mastermind, smoother than any politician who's ever ran. It was ridiculous. I never bought into it. But I saw a bunch of people on the left sharing these memes. And then, of course, as soon as the curtain got pulled back, you saw he couldn't even amble up a pair of stairs or a flight of stairs. He couldn't even string together a sentence. So it was kind of ridiculous, and it was all contrived, and it was all phony. Meanwhile, Trump gets this great photo op that is probably going to work wonders and pay dividends for his campaign for some time to come. I just think that, I get a kick out of that. Does it mean I want him to be president? Not necessarily. But I think, I can objectively stand back and, acknowledge when something is amazing and when something is a historic moment, right? Like, I don't lose my mind over somebody in the same way I didn't with COVID. I remember being in McDonald's during COVID, and everybody's wearing masks except for the people sitting down. But if you're standing, you had to wear a mask. But if you're sitting down and eating, you can take off your mask. And I remember just looking around, and I'm like, have we lost our minds? Like, this makes zero sense whatsoever. I have to wear a mask when I'm standing and ordering, but I can take a mask off when I'm sitting down and eating. And I still see people losing their minds over COVID. Look, I respect people if they want to wear masks. That's fine. And I wore masks too. And I got the first couple shots. Okay. And then the science changed, and then I stopped getting shots. But I just think it's, there's this groupthink and this mentality online where people they get so caught up in these conspiracy theories and this fear mongering, but they don't really stop and think logically about what it would take to actually take over the U.S. One person to take over the U.S.
Well, I think on a whole, in regards to the quarantine time and social media, that it was such a huge step back for everyone's mental health. And our societies are, pretty sickly already in regards to the day in, day outs of our mental health. It's pretty, it's especially if you live in the big cities. And if you don't take care of your mental health game every day, that social media, along with the quarantine, along with the last 4 years, really, man, really did a lot of people in bad. And there, you still see the effects of that, as far as behavior, or maybe new addictions they've taken on. Suicide has gone up, with our young people, and then with men. This is no joke, and this is not a political thing I'm talking about. What I'm just laying this groundwork is how our society, it kind of is kind of struggling right now. And then when something, when a political season comes to play, or like you said, a cultural issue, or security, or immigration, how do you think people are going to take the argument and create their own informed opinion when they're already, kind of handicapped both mentally and with the information they're given. So
yeah, well, part of the problem is the social media networks that we're all on, right? Whose algorithms just keep people in a bubble, serve people what they want to hear, and then when people are exposed to a different idea or a different opinion, it's too much for them to handle. And I saw that even on my Instagram, right? I lost over 100 followers yesterday off of
you
one
did
post.
off of a post.
Yeah, it's so
How
funny.
dare you?
I mean, it's hilarious to me that anybody could not take one difference of opinion that they need to unfollow somebody. And so, I mean, if that rubs you wrong, then I'm probably not a good fit for you anyways, because you haven't even heard my most controversial opinions. So it is just not going to work.
Yeah.
I do think it's kind of funny. I have a
Yep.
comment right here from Vinzinger.
Yep.
I don't know if he's a member of your thing, Paulie?
Yes, he's a member of the Slant for 7 months. Thank you, brother.
What are you doing, man? Dump Paulie. Become a member of my channel.
You can do both. You
No,
can do both.
You can pay double to me of what you would have split between us.
Brandon, you know what? I don't talk about money, right? Come on, man. We're all trying to make an honest living here. You see, this is what I mean.
I would never ever lie to myself to the point of believing politics is an honest sport, Paulie.
What you're witnessing here right now is brown on brown crime, ladies and gentlemen. I don't appreciate it, Brandon. We got to bring our people together. Come on.
Vinzinger says, I want to tell Brandon if he wants or needs some Latinos for debates he wants to host. I recommend Mi Gente podcast. Look, I'm down to debate anybody who's qualified to debate. I get a lot of people that want to, talk politics, but I'm so busy. If I debate, I want to debate somebody who is experienced in politics. So it's got to be a professor. It's got to be somebody who is a journalist, somebody who's worked in politics, like a serious person. Because, I've been doing this for 17 years now. So, I mean, I want somebody who's going to be really, really fun and knowledgeable, and somebody who I could talk to, not just somebody who just wants to argue in circles on X. And so, find somebody for me to debate. I've been trying to find somebody to debate the word Latinx with for a long time. I couldn't get a single journalist or academic to step forward. You find somebody who's actually got some credentials, and I will debate them in a heartbeat, and I will run circles around them. Mark my words. But got to find someone first.
Yeah.
All right, Paulie. So how will Biden be remembered going forward, right? Last week, the media was all over Biden. This week, they're talking about how he took one for the country, how he's going to be ranked as a top 10 president of all time because he's stepping down for the good of the country. How is he actually going to be remembered?
Are you asking me right now, or
I'm just wanting. I want to know your opinion. What do you think?
I mean, the guy quit. That's where I'm at right now. I don't know how he's going to be remembered. I'm sure they're going to glorify him. I live in a state where everything just costs too much. There's just a lot of things that aren't functionally working as a day-to-day society that kind of is important for people. So I'm going to remember him and his people under him as failures of just, getting the basics, as far as infrastructure, as far as, security, safety, as being in total chaos right now. And I that's how he. This guy was a lifelong career politician. He went through many different kind of phases that change with the times. I mean, the guy helped write the crime bill, right?
I'm willing to give politicians like Biden and even Kamala Harris some leeway in terms of the changing times, right? So obviously this era is a lot different than the 80s. It's even different than the 90s. I've changed the way that I've talked to some extent because everybody gets so offended nowadays. And so I think there's been changes. Even I'll defend Kamala for a second. When she went into being a district attorney, we hadn't made anywhere near the amount of reforms in the prison system that we've made now. And so what little things she did do, some of them were quite big at the time because we were still in the middle of mandatory minimum sentencing, 3 strikes, all these different things as a result of the crime in the early 80s and the late 80s and early 90s. And so when she came along, yes, she was tough on crime, but she did implement some policies that had to do with reform that even though they don't seem like a big deal right now, they're actually quite big at the time. So I would defend her on that standpoint. And I would say that everybody kind of adapts to their time. And so I'm willing to cut some break. Now, with that said, there are some politicians who are always looking out for their own interests and who are constantly flip-flopping and who are all over each side of every issue every year. And so those politicians get less, I think, sympathy from me in terms of their criticisms. And I think Kamala is one of those politicians.
Yeah, I mean, and then how because we are talking about the Latino vote, right? And how will Latinos remember Biden?
I don't think they'll remember him at all.
Right.
I mean, I don't. Yeah, I can't think of a president that they will remember. I mean, what president has been that great?
Well, they'll remember
maybe Reagan.
And they'll remember Trump, and they'll remember Obama. No, and Bush. I mean, I think there was, definitely, for good and bad, they'll remember them. Absolutely.
Well, so Bush got the largest share of Hispanic votes of any Republican to date for an election. And he did it 2 elections in a row. And he did 43%, 44% both elections. That's amazing when you think about it, okay? That share of the Latino vote tanked when you saw the emergence of the Tea Party. And then you got to Obama, and then you got Trump, and it just kept going down.
Really?
So, yeah. You didn't know that about Bush?
No, I knew that about Bush. That makes sense. I didn't know
he was
that.
Incredibly popular.
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, he's really tight with Emilio, the Tejano singer. And, he really tied himself with a lot of Tejanos, during his time in Texas, and then as the governor. So no, that makes sense.
And then Reagan, of course, passed amnesty. Now, so Reagan, I think, has kind of a conflicted way in which he'll be remembered because on one hand, he passed one of the largest amnesty bills we've ever seen. On the other hand, he also passed an incredibly tough law on employers who hire undocumented immigrants. So that was kind of the trade-off at the time. So I think his legacy is complicated. However, he did win California. He was popular. A lot of Latinos voted Republican in California. Prop 8, 187 played a role in kind of dissipating that, among other things. But
I think conservative Latinos will love Reagan. I think there were, the Chicanos from the 60s, the United Farm Workers, and then in the 70s with Reagan as a governor, absolutely hated him. So, some of that stuff they don't forget. So it was, him and Cesar went toe to toe on some stuff as well. So Cesar Chavez back in the day. So I think for me, I like to know all about, the groups that liked him, the groups that had a hard time, as far as Reagan, any of these political leaders, I think it's interesting to see, just who flourished and who didn't, because then you have the infestation of crack in all the ghettos and the barrios, and that was rough, man. That was on his time, as well as AIDS. That was on his time.
Sure.
So there's a lot of controversy with that man. So I'm talking about Reagan, as charismatic as he is. He's the dude from Death Valley days.
Yeah. Well, you had the Contras and that whole thing as well.
I mean, we didn't even get on the CIA tip. Yes.
Yeah. And then Obama, you have what did they call him? Deported in chief, right? Like he deported more
By
people than Trump.
immigration groups, by
Yeah.
immigration advocates. They called him the deporter in chief because he's deported more illegal immigrants, undocumented, however you want to call them, more than any other president. Still, I think to this day.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Mm-hmm.
He had Fast and Furious as well on his watch, which I think really hurt him. There were some things that I liked about Obama as far as his presentation went. I think, when you're comparing him to Trump, I think the decorum on Obama's side was much better. He was a much better speaker.
Of
He was
course.
a lot more professional.
He's one
He
of the
was
greats.
long-winded and professorial, and he didn't shoot from the cuff in the same way that Trump does. So they're two contrasting personalities. Ironically, it was Obama that really lit the fire under Trump to run. So if you'll remember at the president's correspondence dinner, Obama was making fun of Trump in the audience.
That's right.
Talking about him running for president, if he ever thought he was going to, and things like that. And that really was the deciding moment with Trump making the decision to actually run for president. Yeah, he was very upset about Obama poking fun at him.
He burned his ego in front of people, man. And I believe at that time he was still a Democrat in good standing as far as giving to Kamala's, all these Democrats he gave money to.
Mm-hmm.
Trump, that is.
Sure.
Yeah, man.
What do you think about the argument now that Trump is too old?
He seems fine. I don't have a problem with his age.
Yeah.
And if he was, I do see him a little older, a little, than 8 years ago. I think he's been through a lot, and then of course, getting shot at. But it seems this guy's got a lot of gusto, as far as his sense of his seems faculties are there. There's other problems I have with him, as a candidate.
Okay? So this kind of you reminded me of something.
Mm-hmm.
One of the lines of attack against Trump that I don't like coming from the left is the fact that he is a felon. Yes, Trump is a felon. He's got 34 felonies, all the same felony, by the way, just 34 pages of the same thing, like running 34 stop signs. But it's interesting to hear the left on how they use the word felon, how they employ it. It's almost as if they forget that, 1/3 of the Black community and Latino communities have been through the justice system, right? Like, if not more. There's a lot of felons. And the way they talk about it, to me, is a little bit infuriating. And I can't help but wonder if that's going to hurt them come election time. Because they used to be kind of the party of justice reform. And forgiveness and things like that. And now the way they talk about felons, they talk about like they're just like the scum of the earth. And that's what you hear in the way that they talk about felons. You don't hear them just talking about Trump. You hear them talking about felons. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how that plays, because contrary to what you think, most felons can vote. In most states, as long as you're not on parole, you can vote. There are some states that you can't vote as a felon, but in most states now, you can vote as long as you're not still actively in the system. So, anyways, I think there's going to be a lot of intangibles like this for the next election. And by the way, I'm more probably worried about the reaction to Trump winning than I am about Trump winning. I don't want Trump to win. I don't really want either of these candidates to win. One of them obviously has to win. But I'm concerned about the reaction from people if Trump does win, because the last thing I want to see is more rioting, things like that. I don't think our country needs that. And I think that there's a profound irony in trying to destroy democracy to save democracy.
Yeah, it's given me a lot to think about. My beloved Democratic Party of yesterday, because it's not the same, and I've never voted other than Democrat.
So
And
you,
I don't talk about this a lot, right? As far as like what I vote for, who I'm going to vote for. I'm still not going to say who I'm going to vote for, because I believe it's ultimately no one's business but my own, and maybe my loved ones that I live together with, and et cetera, et cetera.
why don't you monetize it? Be like, hey, only the people who are this tier of members will know who I vote for.
The highest Latinos, the $20 a
Yeah,
month
the
get to
$20 a
know
month, you can
the
find
twenty
out who
dollars a month,
Paulie's
the
gonna
twenty
vote for.
dollars. I'm gonna tell you who I'm voting for, and I'm
I
gonna
like
tell
that.
you why.
Maybe I'll do
Every
that.
week, I'll give you another reason why I'm gonna vote for. Um, but but seriously, because listen, I was such a progressive, such a liberal man. I was on marches against 187, with Cesar Chavez, and he was still alive. I learned so much about uh, just about my history that was erased, that wasn't talked about coming out of college. I mean, I was OG, PC boy, and and I always believed that those, hey, people fuck up. People deserve second chances. People deserve another chance and another chance. You know, who am I to judge? Who am I to judge? And yet, over the last few years, again, we talk about this. Who are the ones that are just casting so many stones against other people, and then using it as a weapon? They've weaponized, this whole thing. It's like, man, there's a lot of really wonderful people uh, who have done wrong things in the past and have straightened out their lives and have gone on to do wonderful things in society, in their community, and their families.
Hmm.
So I was really surprised to see that from the left, and it's very disheartening. It's very disheartening.
Yeah.
I just
No,
want to say
I would
that.
agree with you. It's a weird spot that we're in as a society, and again, I would say this is indicative of the wings of each party. This
Mm,
sort of like bubble far left, bubble far right, who are just seething at the teeth to try to one up the other. And some of these people have these massive social media followings because
mm,
all day long, all they do is rehash very predictable, very digestible talking points, things that appeal to the masses, a lot of
mm-hmm,
groupthink. People
mm-hmm,
don't want to hear contrarian opinions. People want to hear things that make them feel good. And so that means, in addition to the algorithms, that people just live in these bubbles, and you really have to go outside of out of your way to interact with people who think differently.
mm-hmm.
You have to be proactive.
Well, eh, to me, right? Okay, I'll give another personal example, right, of what when I come up across a problem, right? I'm very fortunate to I'm coming up in less than a month, Brandon, on 9 years of being sober, right? So I work with a man who's my sponsor, and whenever I have a problem, I go to him. I don't like what he has to say.
Sure.
But how am I going to get better? How am I going to learn anything if I don't hear from other people? I mean, I don't have to have a sponsor. I don't
Mhm.
have to do my sobriety this way, but this is the way that has worked for me, because it puts all my what do you want to call it, defects of character, all my daily wrongs, right there for me to work on. And and I get to talk to people, and they get to give advice that I might not want to hear. if you just put yourself in a bubble of people who just want to, like, who you just want them there to blow hot air up your ass and tell you how great you are, oh buddy, wait till the real world comes knocking at your door, because that's not how life is. And that's that weirdo kind of goofball bubble that a lot of far lefties live in. I'm sorry to say that. You just, you want, I don't know what you think reality is, real hardship is. But Brandon, I'll just say this really quick. I've learned the most from people that I disagree with, or that it's hard to hear sometimes what they're trying to say, because my ego gets in the way, and it's like, this is good. I need to consider this. That's all I want to say.
So this is a perfect example right here. So the contrarian opinion is racism, sexism, xenophobia, and fascism. Sorry, no thanks. Yeah. That's such a predictable line from the kind of the left way of thinking, which is completely either or, right? So you're either 100% in line, or you're a racist xenophobe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly why Democrats are probably in the hole like they are from a polling standpoint, because they've turned off so much of the country with this either or attitude of you're either with us or you're a racist. You're either with us or you're a sexist. I agree that there's xenophobic rhetoric that comes from Trump. 100% agree with that. That's one of my biggest problems with Trump.
Yep.
But the idea that you can't criticize Kamala, for example, without being called a sexist or something like that is ridiculous. And I had that on my timeline yesterday, where somebody said basically, if I don't support Kamala, I don't support women's rights. And so that line of thinking doesn't compute with me, because I'm the type of person that I want to hear the criticisms of both sides. I want to hear all the facts. I want to hear the contrarian opinions. And look, to be sure, there are people who use the word contrarian to mask ridiculous, racist, xenophobic rhetoric. But there are plenty of people who are just naturally contrarians. I mean, me, I grew up a fan of people like Christopher Hitchens and things like that, that's what they were as writers. They were contrarians. And as a writer, I've always been somebody who has taken a different position than the other people who are publishing things, because that's how you would get published. In the 80s and 90s, you relished being different from everybody else. So I had guys like Howard Stern and Imus and all these guys who would be completely over the top, wow. Right? Well, now we're in a place in society where it's either or, and everybody's afraid to do something offensive. Everybody's afraid to say something offensive. And so there's not a lot of room for thought that is different. And so, look, I mean, you're not going to get any argument from me when it comes to, racist talk and things like that. Like, I don't like that stuff. I don't want to hear that. But that's not all contrarianism. And there's plenty of people out there who are just people who question things, people who challenge things, people who like to satirize things. I remember this when in 2012 when I was working in Washington, D.C. I've always been somewhat libertarian, and I made fun of Ron Paul, and then a bunch of libertarians got mad at me. And I was like, I mean, aren't you supposed to be the free speech people? What are you so mad at me for? I'm just joking around. I've always kind of had an iconoclastic streak to me, a contrarian streak. I'll make fun of any candidate. I don't care. Even if I'm going to vote for them, makes no difference to me. So I this cult of personality that exists on both sides and this either or mentality is bad for our society. We need to learn to laugh again. We need to learn to take different points of view again. What was the Enlightenment about in Europe? Like, we did all this work for centuries to get to this point where we try to question things and try to analyze all the information and try to find truth in things. we're just going to throw all that away so people just blindly get in line. I'm confused. Anyways, that's my little rant for.
No, it's good, man. That's good. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm right there with you. I think.
Well, good. I'm glad you're right there with me.
I think I've said that what you just said right before you in a different way, but I like the way you put it.
So, Paulie, any parting words, I guess, before we wrap this up?
Yeah, my good people, take care of your mental health during this time.
My mental health?
No, I said good people.
Oh,
good people, like the people out there,
yeah.
peoples. To you, in this, I mean, buckle up.
I'm excited.
Buckle up.
I think this is a blast. This is fun. This is like every 4 years. This is the moment that I wait for. Election years are absolutely 100% the best.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
the sooner that you accept and understand that presidents actually have very little to do with the direction of the country, the better you should feel. The way that our country is set up is there's a lot of moving parts. It takes a lot to get something through, get something done. And so people, I know it's hard not to be passionate about politics, but we've got 3 branches of government for a reason. And so I would not lose sleep over this fear that Kamala is going to get elected and come in here and change everything. And I wouldn't lose sleep over this fear that Trump's going to come in here and change everything. We have checks and balances. I see this right here in the comments. And she's right. We have checks and balances. And we've seen that time and time again. I remember when Obama was going to get elected and everybody lost their minds. The right absolutely lost their minds when Obama got elected.
And the left has been losing their minds right now because of the Supreme Court. It's like, well, it's a branch of government, man. That's, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, and they're calling for, was it term limitations for the judges?
Sure.
So well, yeah, you're right.
Part of the problem with that, I get where he's coming from, but I would say this, even though I want to support it, I don't, because the reason why they don't have term limits is so they can not have to worry about losing their seats and things like that based off their decisions that they make. It's part of the reason why. So judges don't have to worry.
I think they should first start with themselves, term limit the congressmen and the senators, and then if you want, the Supreme Court. But even then I wouldn't, because they're judges. Don't make them politicians.
I used to support term limits, and then I heard a really good argument for why there shouldn't be term limits, which is it takes time to build up political standing in Congress. And so when you go into Congress, sometimes you can't get that in 1 or 2 terms. It takes a long time to build up that political power and that political influence. The other thing is, I mean, you're messing with the will of the voters. I mean, if the voters vote this person in time and time again, no matter how dumb that person might be, it's up to voters. So if they want this person to represent them, then why should government come in and put limits on how many times that person can serve if that's who the voters want? So I'm actually kind of like left on this issue. I don't think we should overturn the will of those voters who are voting for that person to represent their district.
Fair enough. It just gets so incestuous.
I understand the sentiment. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, gets incestuous, and they get corrupt. But you know what? That happens. What I'm seeing too is that whole corruption that starts right away as well with some of these politicians.
Yeah, well, I hate to tell you, the corruption probably doesn't vary a lot between a 1-term person and a 10-term person. I mean, you either have that mentality or you don't. You're either a corrupt person or you're not. And there's certainly, regardless of who you are, you're probably surrounded by all types of temptations the moment you hit Congress. which is why it's on voters to vote good politicians in, people who seem like good people. Mitt Romney, for example, I really liked Mitt Romney. I thought Mitt Romney seemed like a stand-up guy. I think it's too bad that he got chased out of the running, because in retrospect, I think he would have been a good candidate, but he wasn't far enough right for a lot of people. And but he seemed like a good person. Never had any scandals other than driving across the country with his dog on top of his car, which seemed to doom him at the time, if you remember that.
I remember him having the binders full of women.
Binders full of women. Yeah, he misspoke a few times for sure.
Yeah,
There's a few guys. Look, I think
but he was a good guy. You're right.
he seemed like a good guy. Bernie Sanders seems like a good guy to me. Bernie Sanders does not strike me as some corrupt, horrible politician. He's an ideologue, to be for sure, but he never really seemed. I've never seen anything that involved corruption or things like that. So I think there's some people out there who are good people.
Going back to checks and balances, though. I mean, it's there. That's another amazing thing about the way this government was set up. And you know, there's always going to be those people that want to tear it down. And it's just, I would say to you, go try to tear it down in another country, see how that works. This is a pretty enlightened setup as far as the checks and balances of this government.
Oh yeah,
not the people, not the darker stuff.
It's actually it's a brilliant system. Most people actually, they don't take time to actually understand the system and all the checks and balances. They just think of the executive branch, judicial branch, things like that. But it's actually even bigger than that. Our government is extraordinarily complex, and it's also very fragmented on purpose, right? So you can't have one person that goes in there and changes things. The way the elections are set up is set up to where you can't have situations like what just happened in Europe, where somebody can win the election with 10% of the vote. Wow. And there's some really fascinating books about why our system was set up the way it was. But look, in part of my travels over these 30 cities over 5 months that I recently did, I took a lot of met a lot of Uber drivers, taxi drivers, things like that. And it always was interesting to me to meet people from poorer countries, communist countries, and they were so conservative and pro-American coming over here. Like some of the most staunch, patriotic people I meet are people who come from other countries.
100%.
And I think it's because they recognize the opportunity that is here, regardless of its imperfections and its flaws. They come here to better themselves, and they know what it's like to not have all of these opportunities. Whereas in the United States, you grow up with it, you become immune to it to a point that you almost don't see it. We're kind of spoiled being here in the U.S. I had a guy who was driving me in Utah from Venezuela. He was an Uber driver. And he was telling me about how many people he watches just get killed, like shot and killed for over little things. He was telling me about how corrupt the government was, all of these different things, and how excited he was to just be here in the U.S. And how, even though we have crime, how much more opportunity there is, and how it's not quite as frequent as it was where he came from, and how we had these like checks and balances. And you know who he was going to vote for?
Who?
Well, nobody yet, because he wasn't able to vote. I asked him, but he said that if he could, he said that he would vote for Trump. So interesting. But look, we have a lot we can fix with this country. I think that we should try to make it better for everybody. But I'm not for tearing down this country. I don't want to see it down, and I don't want to go backwards. I want to make progress. And we can do that. I think the average people have more in common than we realize, right? If we step away from social media and you're just talking to regular people, a lot of times we have a lot more in common than it feels like online. So, Paulie,
yes, sir.
I want to thank you for joining me tonight. I know we went an hour and a half. This was kind of just a random podcast. I know I texted you earlier. I'm like, hey, you want to come on to the podcast and just talk politics?
Yeah.
So it's always fun. Thank you to everybody who joined us tonight, including Paulie's audience. And maybe we'll see you again for another joint show sometime.
Yeah. Make sure, guys, that you are subscribed to Brandon's channel. So do that now, and that would be wonderful. And,
so you can follow me at Brandon Lauren Maxwell if you want to follow me. Paulie, if you don't have anything else to say, I guess I'll let you go. Say good night, and we'll talk later this week.
Good night, everybody. Have a good one. Be safe.
All right.